2,000 miles of open country, storms, bandits, and exhaustion, all for a single letter. Meet the riders who outran the impossible. In the mid-19th century, America was a nation on the brink of transformation. The year was 1860, and the United States stretched from the Atlantic to the Pacific. But the vast expanse in between, the Great Plains, the Rocky Mountains, the arid deserts, remained a formidable barrier. Communication between the East and the burgeoning West Coast was agonizingly slow. Letters and news traveled by stagecoach or ship, taking weeks or even months to cross the continent. Imagine the frustration. Gold had been discovered in California in 1848, sparking a rush that drew hundreds of thousands westward, yet vital information lagged far behind. Business deals soured, family ties strained, and political tensions simmered without timely updates. As the clouds of the Civil War gathered, the need for rapid mail delivery became not just a convenience, but a national imperative. The federal government sought a solution to bind the nation together, ensuring that messages from Washington could reach California swiftly and vice versa. Enter the Pony Express, a daring enterprise that promised to slash delivery times to a mere 10 days. This wasn't just mail service, it was a lifeline, a testament to human ingenuity and grit in the face of untamed wilderness.
The mail was carried in a specially designed leather pouch called a mochila, derived from the Spanish word for knapsack. This ingenious saddlebag had 4 locked pockets, or cantinas, to secure the letters, and it could be thrown over a horse's saddle in seconds during transfers. To keep costs down and speed up, the Pony Express charged a premium, initially $5 per half-ounce letter, later reduced to $1, still exorbitant compared to the 3-cent stamp for regular mail. But for urgent dispatches, presidential speeches, stock market news, or personal emergencies, it was worth every penny. Recruiting the riders was another critical piece of the puzzle. Advertisements sought young, skinny, wiry fellows not over 18 who were expert riders willing to risk death daily. Orphans were preferred, perhaps because they had fewer ties to hold them back from the perilous job. Each rider had to swear an oath. "I do hereby swear before the great and living God that during my engagement I will under no circumstances use profane language, that I will drink no intoxicating liquors, that I will not quarrel or fight with any other employee of the firm." This moral code, insisted upon by the devout Alexander Majors, aimed to instill discipline in a workforce facing constant danger. The riders' gear was minimal to save weight and maximize speed. They carried only a Bible, provided by Majors, a horn to signal their approach to stations, a revolver and knife for defense, and perhaps a water canteen. No heavy coats or bedrolls. The emphasis was on lightness. Riders themselves weighed no more than 125 pounds to ease the burden on the horses. Their pay? A handsome $100 to $150 per month, far above average wages, reflecting the risks involved.
The horses were the unsung heroes of the operation. Selected for endurance and speed, they were typically Mustangs or thoroughbred mixes, hardy enough to handle the diverse terrains. Each station kept a stable of 4 to 6 horses, ready to be saddled at a moment's notice. A rider might cover 75 to 100 miles in a single shift, changing horses 5 to 10 times, pushing both man and beast to their limits. The average speed was about 10 miles per hour, but in favorable conditions, it could reach 20. Launching on April 3, 1860, the first eastbound rider departed from Sacramento, while the westbound started from St. Joseph. Crowds gathered in both cities, cheering as the mochilas were loaded with letters, newspapers, and even a message from President James Buchanan. The inaugural run took just under 10 days, proving the concept viable. Over its 18-month lifespan, the Pony Express completed around 308 runs, carrying over 34,000 pieces of mail without losing a single mochila, though not without close calls. Yet, this efficiency came at a cost. The wilderness was unforgiving. Riders braved blizzards that buried trails in snow, flash floods that turned dry creek beds into raging torrents, and scorching heat that dehydrated both horse and human. Bandits lurked in remote areas, eyeing the valuable cargo, while encounters with Native American tribes, whose lands the route bisected, added layers of tension. The Paiute War in 1860, for instance, led to attacks on stations and riders, forcing temporary shutdowns and heroic evasions.
Survival tactics were honed through necessity. Riders learned to read the land, spotting signs of storms or ambushes from afar. They rode at night when possible to avoid detection, using the stars as guides. In hostile territories, they might detour off main trails or signal for help with their horns. Exhaustion was a constant foe. After a grueling ride, a rider might collapse into a bunk at a home station only to be roused hours later for the return leg. The Pony Express wasn't just about mail. It embodied the American ethos of pushing boundaries. It shortened the news cycle dramatically. Lincoln's election victory reached California in record time, helping to keep the state aligned with the Union. But its legacy extends beyond practicality. It symbolized sacrifice. Riders like Pony Bob Haslam, who once rode 380 miles in 36 hours straight after his relief failed to show, exemplified the "mail must go through" mantra. As we delve deeper, we'll explore the intricate logistics that made this relay system a marvel of its time. From the precise timing of horse changes to the strategic placement of stations, every detail was calibrated for speed. But first, let's consider the human element, the riders who stared down death for a paycheck and a purpose.
As the Pony Express burst onto the scene in 1860, its success rested not on individual heroics alone, but on a finely tuned machine of logistics that turned chaos into clockwork. At the heart of this system were the relay stations, lonely outposts scattered across the wilderness, and the horses that powered the relentless charge. Without these elements, the promise of 10-day deliveries would have crumbled under the weight of distance and danger. Let's uncover how these stations formed the spine of the operation and why the choice of horses was as crucial as the riders themselves. The relay stations were the unsung anchors of the Pony Express route, transforming a 1,966-mile trek into manageable segments. Spaced every 10 to 15 miles for horse changes, these swing stations were basic affairs, often a single-room shack with a corral, a well or water source, and a stock of hay and grain. Keepers, hardy souls hired to maintain the sites, lived in isolation, tending to the animals and preparing for the next rider's arrival. Their vigilance was key. A delayed horse swap could add hours to a run, jeopardizing the entire schedule. Further apart, every 75 to 100 miles, stood the home stations, where riders transferred the mochila to a fresh colleague. These was slightly more substantial, with bunks for rest, a kitchen for meager meals like beans and bacon, and sometimes a blacksmith for shoeing horses. In total, 190 stations dotted the landscape, from the fertile Missouri River Valley to the barren salt flats of Utah. Building them was a logistical triumph in itself. Russell, Majors, and Waddell dispatched teams in early 1860 to scout locations, negotiating with landowners, or simply claiming spots on public domain. In remote areas, materials were hauled by wagon, lumber from nearby forests, adobe from local clay. Some stations repurposed existing trading posts or forts, like Fort Laramie in Wyoming, which served as a major hub.
Maintaining these stations demanded constant resupply. Freight wagons lumbered along the route monthly, delivering oats, tools, and provisions. Costs were staggering. The Pony Express burned through $700,000 in its first year alone, much of it on feed and upkeep. Yet efficiency ruled. Station keepers used signal fires or flags to alert approaching riders, ensuring a fresh mount was saddled and ready.
The transfer process was drilled to perfection. A rider would blow his horn a mile out, dismount on the fly, sling the mochila onto the new horse, and vanish into the dust in under 2 minutes. This relay precision shaved precious time, allowing the mail to average 200 miles per day. But the stations weren't just pit stops, they were fortresses against the wild. In bandit-prone areas like the Platte River Valley, keepers kept rifles handy, barricading doors at night. During the Paiute Uprising in Nevada, several stations were razed, forcing riders to improvise longer legs between safe points. One keeper at Egan Station in Utah fended off an attack single-handedly, buying time for a rider to escape. These outposts embodied resilience, often manned by just 1 or 2 men who braved loneliness, wolves, and weather for $50 a month. Turning to the horses, the true engines of the Pony Express, their selection and care were paramount. The company purchased over 400 steeds, prioritizing breeds that blended speed, stamina, and sure-footedness. Mustangs from the Western Plains were favorites. Tough, agile animals accustomed to rough terrain, weighing 800 to 1,000 pounds. Thoroughbred crosses added bursts of velocity for flat stretches, while Morgans provided endurance for mountainous hauls. No pampered racehorses here. These were working animals, valued at $150 to $200 each, a small fortune.
Each horse covered 10 to 15 miles per leg at a full gallop, often pushing 20 miles per hour on good ground. To prevent breakdown, riders monitored for lameness or overheating, easing pace on ascents. At stations, grooms rubbed down sweaty flanks, checked hooves for stones, and fed a quick ration of oats. Veterinary knowledge was rudimentary, but common sense prevailed. Rotation ensured no horse ran consecutive legs, and injured ones were rested or replaced. In winter, blankets warded off frost. In summer, frequent watering combated dehydration. The bond between rider and horse was forged in adversity. Riders like Johnny Fry, the first westbound courier, spoke of their mounts as partners, sensing fatigue through subtle cues, a faltering stride, or labored breath. Tactics for survival included pacing. Trot on inclines, canter on flats, gallop only when necessary. In storms, riders dismounted to lead horses through drifts, using the animal's warmth for shelter. Against predators, a well-timed shot from the saddle scared off coyotes or bears. Logistics extended to the mochila's design, optimized for horse and rider. Weighing just 13 pounds empty, it distributed mail evenly across the saddle, minimizing strain. Saddles themselves were lightweight McClellan models, military issue for durability. Riders avoided spurs to prevent sores, relying instead on voice commands and gentle whips.
Yet challenges abounded. Horse theft was rampant. Bandits or opportunistic settlers targeted stations, prompting armed guards. Disease outbreaks, like glanders, could sideline entire stables. In native territories, such as the Shoshonelands in Wyoming, riders navigated carefully to avoid spooking herds that might attract attention. The Paiute conflict highlighted vulnerabilities. In May 1860, warriors destroyed 7 stations and killed keepers, stealing dozens of horses and forcing a month-long suspension. Riders adopted by traveling in pairs or at night, but the toll was high. Over 150 horses lost in the war. Despite setbacks, the system's ingenuity shone. Backup routes were mapped for floods or blockades, and express riders occasionally doubled as scouts, reporting station status. The logistics fostered innovation. Early use of lightweight paper for letters reduced weight, presaging modern airmail. As we reflect on these elements, the Pony Express emerges as a masterclass in 19th century operations, a blend of planning, adaptability, and raw determination. The stations and horses didn't just support the riders, they enabled the miracle of speed across a continent still wild at heart. But what of the men who mounted those horses? In our next segment,
we'll meet the riders up close, their recruitment, rigorous routines, and the unyielding spirit that drove them through the untamed West.
With the relay station standing sentinel and the horses primed for the dash, the Pony Express turned its gaze to the men who would bridge the gaps, the riders. These were no ordinary couriers. They were the pulse of the operation, young adventurers who traded safety for speed in a land that forgave no mistakes. In this segment, we explore the recruitment process, the rigorous demands placed upon them, and the unyielding daily routines that defined their existence. Their story is one of youth, discipline, and an unbreakable commitment to the motto, "The mail must go through." Recruitment for the Pony Express was a call to the bold and the desperate. In early 1860, as the company geared up for launch, advertisements appeared in newspapers across the frontier. Wanted: young, skinny, wiry fellows not over 18, must be expert riders willing to risk death daily, orphans preferred. This blunt appeal targeted a specific profile: lightweight to spare the horses, agile for long hauls, and unattached to minimize liabilities if tragedy struck. The age cap wasn't strict. Riders ranged from 14 to their early 20s, with legends like 15-year-old Billy Tate and 20-year-old Buffalo Bill Cody, who claimed a stint, though debated, joining the ranks. Experience mattered. Many were former stable hands, cowboys, or scouts familiar with horses and trails. The hiring process was overseen by division superintendents like Bolivar Roberts in the West and Benjamin Ficklin in the East. Applicants gathered at key points like St. Joseph or Salt Lake City, demonstrating their horsemanship through trials, galloping at full speed, quick dismounts, and handling skittish mounts. Once selected, each rider swore a solemn oath drafted by Alexander Majors, a pious founder who infused the enterprise with moral rigor. The pledge read, "I do hereby swear, before the great and living God, that during my engagement as a member of the Pony Express, I will, under no circumstances, use profane language, that I will drink no intoxicating liquors, that I will not quarrel or fight with any other employee of the firm, and that in every respect I will conduct myself honestly, be faithful to my duties, and so direct all my acts as to win the confidence of my employers. So help me God."
This oath wasn't mere formality, it was enforced. Riders carried a small Bible as a reminder, and violations could lead to dismissal. Pay was enticing, $50 to $150 per month, depending on the route's peril, plus room and board at home stations. For context, a farmhand earned $20 monthly, making this a lucrative gamble. About 80 riders were employed at any time, with turnover high due to injuries or burnout. Training was hands-on and brief. The wilderness itself was the ultimate instructor. New hires learned the route's nuances from veterans. Landmarks like Chimney Rock in Nebraska or Echo Canyon in Utah served as waypoints. They practiced mochila transfers until seamless, timing themselves to under 2 minutes. Survival basics were drilled: how to ford swollen rivers without drowning horse and rider, spot buffalo stampedes from dust clouds, or build emergency fires with buffalo chips in treeless plains. Firearms training emphasized defense over offense. Each rider packed a Colt revolver and a Bowie knife, but ammunition was limited to save weight. The daily grind began with the mochila's arrival. Riders worked in shifts, covering 75 to 100 miles per run, typically one way before resting. A typical day, or night as many rode after dark, started with a station keeper's shout, "Rider coming!" The incoming courier would hurl the mochila, and the fresh rider, often roused from sleep, would mount up in seconds. No time for breakfast, a quick gulp of coffee sufficed. The route demanded constant vigilance. On flat prairies, riders pushed for speed, leaning low to cut wind resistance. In mountains, they walked horses up steep grades to conserve energy.
Meals were sparse and strategic. Riders carried no food, relying on stations for sustenance, jerky, hardtack, or whatever game was hunted. Water was rationed. In deserts like the 40-mile desert in Nevada, they endured thirst, sometimes sharing canteens with their mounts. Clothing was functional: lightweight wool shirts, trousers, boots, and a slouch hat. In winter,
Buffalo robes provided warmth, but bulk was avoided. Exhaustion was the silent killer. After a run, riders collapsed into straw bunks, sleeping fitfully amid the stench of stables and the howls of coyotes outside. Survival tactics evolved from experience. To evade bandits, riders varied paths slightly, using coulees or riverbeds for cover. In storms, they sought shelter in rock outcrops or dug snow trenches. Against wildlife, a loud yell or gunshot deterred threats. Navigation relied on instinct. The North Star guided night rides, while memorized milestones prevented getting lost in blizzards. One tactic was Indian-style riding, low on the horse's neck to present a smaller target in hostile areas. The physical toll was immense. Riders suffered saddle sores, broken bones from falls, and exposure illnesses. Yet camaraderie bound them. At home stations, they shared tales around fires, forging bonds in isolation. Women were rare but present. Some stations had female keepers, like at Cold Springs, adding a touch of domesticity.
Diversity marked the roster. While many were white frontiersmen, riders included immigrants like Irishman Robert Ponybob Haslam and possibly Hispanic vaqueros. Interactions with station staff, often trappers or immigrants, enriched their worldview. As the operation matured, riders adapted to escalating dangers. During the Paiute War, they carried extra arms and scouted ahead. One rider, William Cody, if his accounts hold, claimed to have outrun warriors by switching horses mid-chase. These men weren't just employees, they were pioneers, embodying the West's spirit. In summing up, the riders' recruitment and routines reveal the human core of the Pony Express, a blend of youthful bravado and disciplined resolve. They transformed a logistical dream into reality, one gallop at a time. But survival demanded more than oaths and training. It required cunning against nature's fury and human foes. Next, we'll delve into those perils, the brutal weather, lurking bandits, and the art of endurance that kept the mail moving.
The Pony Express riders were more than messengers. They were survivors in a landscape that tested every fiber of their being. Beyond the structured relays and sworn oaths lay the raw unpredictability of the trail, ferocious weather that could erase paths in an instant, bandits hungry for easy prey, and the creeping specter of exhaustion that dulled reflexes and invited disaster. In this part, we examine the survival tactics these young men employed to conquer these threats, drawing on ingenuity, instinct, and sheer willpower to ensure the mail pressed on, no matter the cost. Weather was the most relentless adversary, a force indifferent to schedules or human limits. The 2,000-mile route spanned diverse climates, from the humid Missouri bottoms to the alpine chills of the Rockies and the blistering heat of the Nevada deserts. Riders faced it all, often in extremes that modern travelers can scarcely imagine. Blizzards were common in the high passes, like South Pass in Wyoming, where snowdrifts piled feet high, obscuring trails and freezing exposed skin. Survival started with preparation. Riders layered clothing sparingly, a wool undershirt, vest, and perhaps an oilskin poncho to avoid overheating during exertion. In whiteouts, they relied on dead reckoning, memorizing the route's contours and using landmarks like distinctive rock formations or tree lines visible before the storm hit.
One key tactic was dismounting during severe gales or ice. Walking beside the horse provided stability and shared body heat, preventing slips that could lame the animal or injure the rider. If buried in snow, riders fashioned crude shelters by piling drifts around them, using the horse as a windbreak and kindling a small fire with matches kept dry in waxed pouches. Flash floods posed the opposite peril, especially along the Platte River, where spring thaws turned placid streams into torrents. Riders scouted crossings from afar, looking for ripples indicating shallow spots, and swam horses across if needed, clutching the mochila high to keep letters dry. In one infamous incident, a rider named James Moore forded a raging river by lashing himself to his horse,
emerging soaked but successful. Heat waves in the Great Basin were equally deadly, with temperatures soaring over 100 degrees Fahrenheit and water sources miles apart. Dehydration tactics included rationing sips from canteens, wetting bandanas to cool necks, and riding at dawn or dusk to evade midday sun. Horses suffered most. Riders monitored for foaming sweat or staggering, easing pace and seeking shade in canyons. Mirages could disorient, so mental discipline was crucial, reciting prayers or songs to stay focused. Dust storms, whipped by prairie winds, blinded and choked. Riders tied kerchiefs over faces, leaning into the gale while trusting the horse's instincts to stay on course. Bandits represented a human threat, opportunistic outlaws drawn to the Pony Express's valuable cargo. Not just letters, but sometimes gold dust or bank drafts worth thousands. Remote stretches like the Sweetwater Valley in Wyoming or the Carson Sink in Nevada were hotspots where isolation favored ambushes. Riders' primary tactic was speed, outrunning pursuers by maintaining a relentless gallop, switching to fresher horses at stations. But evasion required cunning. They varied routines, avoiding predictable arrival times, and used decoy paths, faint trails paralleling the main route to shake tails.
Armed defense was a last resort. Each rider carried a single-shot revolver, or later a repeating Spencer carbine, but with limited ammo, accuracy counted. Tactics included firing warning shots to deter, or, if cornered, using terrain, hiding in ravines or behind boulders for cover. Station keepers often joined the fray, forming ad hoc posses. In 1860, rider Elijah Nick Wilson escaped a gang by feigning injury, luring them close before spurring his horse into a breakout sprint. Intelligence gathering helped. Riders shared bandit sightings at handoffs, creating an informal network of warnings. To minimize temptation, mochilas were locked, and riders carried no personal valuables, projecting poverty to dissuade robbers. Exhaustion, however, was the insidious foe that compounded all others, eroding judgment after hours in the saddle. A standard run might last 10 to 12 hours, covering 100 miles with minimal breaks, leading to sleep deprivation and muscle fatigue. Survival hinged on pacing. Riders alternated gaits, walk, trot, canter, to conserve energy, breathing deeply to combat dizziness. Mental tricks abounded, focusing on the next station as a milestone, or visualizing family to summon resolve. At home stations, brief rests were optimized. A quick meal of high-energy foods like dried fruit or pemmican, followed by stretching to loosen cramps. Hydration and nutrition were tactical, sipping water steadily rather than gulping, and chewing tobacco or herbs for alertness. Despite the oath against vices, some bent rules. In extreme cases, riders tied themselves to saddles to prevent falling off during drowsy spells. The company enforced rotations to prevent burnout, but during shortages, like after Paiute attacks, riders like Pony Bob Haslam pushed limits, once riding 120 miles non-stop. Recovery tactics post-run included hot foot soaks at stations to restore circulation and prevent frostbite or blisters.
These tactics weren't foolproof. Losses occurred. Riders perished from hypothermia, drownings, or shootouts, their names etched in Pony Express lore as martyrs. Yet the system's resilience shone through adaptations, reinforced stations in bandit zones, weather scouts at key passes, and buddy systems during crises. The rider's ethos, drilled in training, emphasized improvisation, using a saddle blanket as a raft or a horn blast to summon distant help. In essence, survival on the Pony Express was a dance with danger, where tactics blended preparation, adaptability, and grit. Weather, bandits, and exhaustion forged these young men into legends, their strategies ensuring not just personal endurance, but the unbroken chain of communication. As we move forward, these challenges paled compared to navigating Native American territories, where cultural clashes and territorial disputes added layers of complexity and peril to the ride.
As Pony Express riders thundered across the American frontier, they entered a world not fully their own, the ancestral territories of Native American tribes whose lives were inextricably tied to the land. The route sliced through domains of the Sioux, Shoshone, Paiute, Bannock, and others, sparking a complex tapestry of encounters ranging from cautious alliances to outright conflict. In this segment, we delve into how riders navigated these sensitive areas, the survival tactics they employed amid cultural clashes, and the pivotal Paiute War that nearly derailed the entire operation. This chapter reveals the Pony Express not just as a triumph of speed, but as a microcosm of the broader tensions reshaping the West. The Pony Express route traversed over 1,900 miles of native lands, often without formal treaties or permissions, reflecting the era's expansionist mindset. Starting from Missouri, riders crossed Pawnee and Cheyenne territories along the Platte River, where buffalo hunts and seasonal migrations were commonplace. Further west, in Wyoming, Shoshone and Arapaho lands dominated the South Pass region, a vital corridor through the Rockies. Utah brought encounters with Ute and Goshute peoples, while Nevada's Great Basin was home to the Paiute and Washoe. In California, the trail skirted Modoc and Maidu areas before reaching Sacramento. These tribes viewed the influx of white settlers and their infrastructure as intrusions, disrupting hunting grounds, water sources, and sacred sites. Initial interactions were often pragmatic. Many tribes tolerated or even assisted the riders, recognizing the express as a transient presence compared to wagon trains or miners. Riders adopted respectful tactics, learning basic sign language or phrases in tribal tongues to communicate needs like water or safe passage. They carried trade goods, beads, tobacco, or knives as gestures of goodwill, bartering for fresh horses or guides in remote areas. Station keepers at places like Fort Bridger in Shoshone Territory fostered relationships by hiring native workers or sharing meals, creating informal alliances that provided early warnings of unrest.
Survival in these territories demanded cultural awareness. Riders timed crossings to avoid peak hunting seasons, when tribes were more protective of resources. They scouted for signs of encampments, smoke from fires or tracks, and detoured if possible, using parallel trails to minimize contact. Night riding became a staple in sensitive zones. Under cover of darkness, riders muffled hooves with cloth wraps to evade detection, relying on the moon or stars for navigation. The mochila's lightweight design aided stealth, allowing quick escapes if spotted. Yet misunderstandings festered. The rapid pace of riders sometimes startled tribal groups, leading to pursuits mistaken for aggression. In response, riders used non-lethal signals, waving white flags or blowing horns in patterns signaling peace. If confronted, they dismounted and approached slowly, hands visible to de-escalate. Firearms were holstered unless absolutely necessary, as provoking fights could invite retaliation against stations. One tactic was gift leaving, dropping items like blankets at a distance as offerings, buying time to retreat. The Paiute War of 1860 epitomized the boiling point of these tensions. Sparked in May near Williams Station in Nevada, the conflict arose from settler abuses, kidnappings of Paiute women, and destruction of food stores during a harsh winter. When Paiute warriors retaliated by burning the station and killing 5 men, it ignited a broader uprising led by Chief Numaga. The Pony Express, seen as an extension of white encroachment, became a target. Over the next months, Paiute forces attacked at least 7 stations, including Cold Springs and Simpson Park, killing keepers and stealing horses. Riders faced ambushes in narrow canyons where arrows rained from cliffsides.
During the war, survival tactics intensified. The company suspended service for a month in June, rerouting mail via steamer ships around Panama as a stopgap. When operations resumed, riders traveled in armed pairs or with military escorts from nearby forts like Camp Floyd in Utah. They adopted guerrilla-style evasion, hiding in sagebrush during daylight, emerging only at dusk, and using decoy riders to draw fire. Station fortifications improved. Earthen walls, loopholes for rifles, and stockpiled ammunition turned outposts into mini-forts. One legendary escape involved rider Warren Upson, who outran Paiute pursuers for 75 miles by switching horses thrice, his mount collapsing at the next station. The U.S. Army's intervention quelled the uprising by July, with battles like the one at Pyramid Lake resulting in heavy Paiute losses. A fragile peace followed, but the war's toll was severe. 16 Express employees dead, 150 horses lost, and damages exceeding $75,000. It highlighted the riders' vulnerability. Young men caught in geopolitical crossfire, their tactics shifting from diplomacy to defense. Post-war, the company negotiated truces, offering annuities or jobs to tribes, fostering uneasy coexistence. Beyond conflict, some interactions were symbiotic. Shoshone guides occasionally led riders through treacherous passes, sharing knowledge of hidden springs or edible plants. In return, the Express provided news or medical supplies. These exchanges underscored a mutual respect amid adversity, with riders like Robert Haslam crediting native tracking skills for their own survival learnings.
Navigating native territories also involved logistical adaptations. Stations in tribal areas were spaced closer for quicker relays, reducing exposure time. Riders carried peace papers, documents from Indian agents affirming non-hostile intent, though their effectiveness varied. In winter, when tribes hunkered down, risks lessened, but summer migrations heightened vigilance. The broader legacy of these encounters is bittersweet. The Pony Express accelerated westward expansion, paving the way for railroads that further displaced tribes. Yet it also preserved stories of resilience on both sides. Paiute warriors' strategic raids demonstrated sophisticated warfare, while riders' adaptability showcased frontier ingenuity. In reflecting on this era, the Pony Express riders' forays through native lands reveal the human cost of progress, a blend of bravery, diplomacy, and tragedy. Their tactics ensured survival, but at the expense of indigenous sovereignty. As we continue, these trials culminate in the enduring legacy of the Pony Express, a brief blaze of speed that left an indelible mark on American history, symbolizing sacrifice and the unyielding drive to connect a divided nation.
The Pony Express, for all its daring and drama, was a fleeting chapter in America's story, a brilliant spark that illuminated the path to modernity before being outshone by innovation. Lasting just 18 months from April 1860 to October 1861, it succumbed not to the wilderness it conquered, but to the inexorable march of technology. In this part, we examine the factors that led to its decline, the final rides that sealed its fate, and how the telegraph's wires rendered horseback relays obsolete. Yet, even in eclipse, the Express left a blueprint for future communications, underscoring the sacrifices that paved the way for a connected nation. By mid-1861, the Pony Express had proven its mettle, delivering mail with remarkable reliability amid wars, weather, and wilderness. It carried pivotal messages. Abraham Lincoln's inaugural address reached California in a record 7 days and 17 hours, bolstering Union loyalty on the West Coast as the Civil War erupted. Business flourished too, with stock reports and contracts zipping across the continent, fueling economic ties. But operational strains mounted. Financially, the venture hemorrhaged money. Subsidies from the government covered only part of the $700,000 annual costs, while revenues from high-priced letters fell short. The Paiute War alone inflicted $75,000 in damages, straining resources and morale. Logistically, the system pushed limits. Horse procurement grew challenging as demand outstripped supply, with mustangs becoming scarcer due to overhunting and settlement. Stations required constant upkeep against erosion and raids, and rider recruitment waned as the war drew young men to military service. The route's isolation amplified these issues. Supply wagons bogged down in mud or snow, delaying essentials like grain or ammunition. Despite efficiencies, like reducing rider weight limits further or optimizing station spacing, the human and equine toll accumulated. Riders battled chronic fatigue, with some quitting after mere weeks, their bodies battered by endless jolts and exposure. External pressures accelerated the end. The Civil War, erupting in April 1861, diverted federal attention and funds. The government, which had subsidized the Express with an $800,000 contract for semi-weekly mail, shifted priorities to wartime communications. Confederate sympathies in border states like Missouri threatened eastern terminals, prompting armed guards and reroutes. But the true death knell was technological: the transcontinental telegraph. Even as the Pony Express launched, visionaries like Hiram Sibley of Western Union plotted a wired network to span the continent, promising instantaneous messaging over horseback's days-long delays. Construction of the telegraph began in earnest in 1861, with crews working from both coasts inward. The eastern leg started from Omaha, Nebraska, linking to existing lines, while the western pushed from Carson City, Nevada. Challenges mirrored the Express. Workers braved the same blizzards, bandits, and native resistances, hauling poles across deserts and stringing wires over mountains. Buffalo herds notoriously rubbed against poles, toppling them, while sabotage during the Paiute conflicts delayed progress. Yet, innovation triumphed. Insulated wires and Morse code operators created a system far superior in speed and capacity.
Riders sensed the shift. As telegraph poles dotted the horizon, they carried updates on the very project dooming their jobs. In a poignant irony, Pony Express couriers transported tools and messages for telegraph builders, hastening their own obsolescence. Survival tactics adopted one last time. Riders dodged construction crews to avoid delays, but the writing was on the wire. By October 1861, the lines met at Salt Lake City, completing the circuit. The first transcontinental message, sent on October 24 from California Chief Justice Stephen J. Field to President Lincoln, read, "California to the Union, may our new tie bind us closer." The Pony Express's final runs were laced with nostalgia. On October 24, 1861, the same day as the telegraph's activation, the last eastbound rider departed Sacramento, while the westbound left St. Joseph 2 days later. Crowds gathered, cheering the couriers as symbols of a bygone era. Riders like Billy Richardson covered their legs with extra vigor, knowing history rode with them. Upon arrival, the mochilas were unloaded for the last time, their contents now redundant in a wired world. The company announced closure immediately, citing the telegraph's superiority. Employees dispersed. Some joined the Union Army, others the telegraph service. A few lingered as station keepers turned farmers. The transition highlighted the Express's sacrifices. Over 308 runs, it delivered 34,753 letters without losing a single mochila, but at the cost of 16 lives, from accidents, attacks, and ailments. Horses perished by the hundreds, their endurance pushed beyond limits. Financially, Russell, Majors, and Waddell never recouped investments, leading to bankruptcy in 1862. Yet, these losses weren't in vain. The Pony Express demonstrated the feasibility of overland communication, scouting routes later used by the telegraph and railroads.
In its wake, the telegraph revolutionized America. News flashed in minutes.
Battles updates during the Civil War unified strategies. Markets reacted in real time, and families connected instantly. But the Express's human element, the raw bravery of riders facing the wild, became legend, romanticized in dime novels and folklore. Figures like Buffalo Bill Cody parlayed their experiences into Wild West shows, perpetuating the mythos. Logistically, the decline taught lessons in adaptability. The relay model's efficiency inspired modern logistics, from FedEx's hub-and-spoke systems to digital data packets zipping through networks. Survival tactics, pacing resources, evading threats, improvising in crises, echoed in later frontiers like aviation mail routes. As we ponder this eclipse, the Pony Express emerges not as a failure, but a bridge to progress. Its brief run symbolized the American spirit, bold, sacrificial, and forward-looking. Riders braved the wilderness not for glory, but to shrink a vast land, binding east and west. In our next exploration, we'll uncover the personal stories of sacrifice, the riders who paid the ultimate price, and how their legacies endure in monuments, museums, and the cultural fabric of the nation.
Behind the grand machinery of the Pony Express, the stations, horses, and routes, stood the individuals whose personal sacrifices breathed life into the legend. These young riders, often mere teenagers, faced death not as abstract risk, but as daily companion, their stories woven into the fabric of American folklore. In this segment, we honor their valor through tales of endurance, tragedy, and quiet heroism, exploring how their deeds exemplified the ultimate commitment to duty. From grueling marathons to fatal encounters, these narratives reveal the human cost of speed, reminding us that every letter delivered carried the weight of real lives. One of the most iconic figures was Robert "Pony Bob" Haslam, a 20-year-old Englishman whose exploits captured the imagination of a nation. Hired in 1860, Haslam rode the treacherous Nevada segment from Friday Station at Lake Tahoe to Bucklands in the Carson Valley. His most famous ride unfolded during the Paiute War in May 1860. With stations burned and relief riders missing or killed, Haslam volunteered for a suicide mission. Starting from Fridays, he galloped 120 miles eastward to Smith's Creek, dodging arrows and evading war parties by riding through the night. Exhausted but undeterred, he found no replacement waiting. The station was abandoned. After a brief rest amid the ruins, he turned back, covering another 190 miles westward over 36 hours, changing horses 13 times and battling fatigue that blurred his vision.
Haslam's tactics were a masterclass in survival. He used the terrain, hugging canyon walls for cover and crossing open deserts under moonlight to avoid detection. His horse, a sturdy Mustang, collapsed from exhaustion upon arrival, but the mochila, containing vital military dispatches, made it through. For this feat, Haslam earned a $100 bonus and national acclaim, later recounting modestly, "I just kept going. The mail had to." His story underscores the rider's mental fortitude. Amid isolation, fear was conquered by routine, focus on the next relay, trust in the horse, and faith in the oath. Haslam survived the Express, living to 89 and becoming a hotelier, but his ride remains a symbol of unyielding sacrifice. Not all tales ended in triumph. Consider 15-year-old William "Billy" Tate, one of the youngest riders, assigned to the Ruby Valley stretch in Nevada. In August 1860, during the Paiute conflict's aftermath, Tate set out from Egan Station with the mail. Ambushed by a band of warriors in a narrow pass, he spurred his horse into a frantic gallop, weaving through boulders while arrows whistled past. Witnesses later found his body riddled with 7 arrows, the mochila clutched tightly, its contents intact. Tate's final act, refusing to abandon the mail even as he fell, epitomized the rider's code. His youth amplified the tragedy. An orphan as preferred by recruiters, he had no family to mourn him publicly, yet his grave near Ruby Station became a pilgrimage site for later travelers. Survival in such encounters relied on split-second decisions. Riders like Tate carried minimal arms, opting for speed over standoffs. Tactics included playing dead, slumping in the saddle to lure attackers closer before bolting, or using the horn to mimic distress calls, hoping to summon aid from distant stations. But against superior numbers, luck often decided fates. Tate's sacrifice highlighted the demographic toll. Many riders were adolescents, their inexperience offset by agility, but vulnerability stark in hostile lands.
Another poignant story is that of Major Egan, not a rider, but a division superintendent whose leadership embodied collective sacrifice. During the Paiute War, Egan rode reconnaissance missions himself, scouting destroyed stations and rallying survivors. In one instance, he traversed 200 miles in 2 days to deliver reinforcements, fording flooded rivers and navigating by starlight. His efforts saved multiple riders, but the stress aged him prematurely. Egan's tactics involved community building. He negotiated temporary truces with Paiute leaders, offering food in exchange for safe passage, blending diplomacy with defense. Women, though rare, contributed to the saga. Aunt Sally, a station keeper's wife at Shell Creek, Nevada, stepped up during raids. When Paiutes attacked in 1860, she loaded rifles for defenders while tending wounded riders. Her calm presence boosted morale. Though not a rider, her story illustrates the broader ecosystem of sacrifice, families and support staff who braved the same dangers without the glory. James or Jimmy Butler's ordeal showcases exhaustion's cruel grip. Riding the Platte River leg, Butler once covered 140 miles without relief after a blizzard buried stations. Battling hypothermia, he dismounted to walk his horse through drifts, rubbing his limbs to stave off frostbite. Upon arrival, he collapsed, frostbitten toes requiring amputation. Butler's recovery tactic, wrapping feet in horse blankets soaked in warm water at the next station, saved his life but ended his riding days. His sacrifice reflected the physical price. Many riders emerged scarred, with chronic ailments from saddle sores to respiratory issues from dust inhalation.
These personal accounts were amplified by the era's media. Newspapers sensationalized rides, dubbing riders knights of the saddle, fostering a mythology that outlasted the service. Yet reality was grimmer. Of the 200-plus riders, at least 6 died on duty, from falls, drownings, or violence. Their legacies endure in small ways. Haslam's statue in State Line, Nevada, Tate's marker in the desert, annual reenactment rides by the National Pony Express Association, where modern volunteers retrace the route, honoring the original sacrifices. Logistically, these stories informed improvements. After losses, the company added more scouts and fortified stations, reducing fatalities. Survival tactics evolved collectively, shared knowledge of edible plants for starvation, or herbal remedies for wounds, passed rider to rider. In honoring these heroes, we see the Pony Express as a human endeavor, where individual valor propelled a national vision. Their sacrifices, lives lost, bodies broken, youth stolen, ensured the mail's passage, binding a fractured country. As we approach the legacy, these tales transition to the broader impact, how the Express's speed revolutionized communication, inspiring technologies and cultural icons that echo through time.
The Pony Express may have galloped into history after just 18 months, but its spirit refused to fade with the last rider's dust. Instead, it thundered into the American imagination, becoming a cornerstone of popular culture and collective memory. In this penultimate segment, we explore how the Express transcended its brief existence to shape myths, inspire art, and endure as a symbol of frontier heroism. Through literature, film, stamps, and reenactments, the rider's sacrifices fueled a narrative of speed and valor that continues to captivate, reminding us how a fleeting enterprise became an eternal emblem of the American West. Almost immediately after its closure in 1861, the Pony Express entered the realm of legend.
Newspapers of the era sensationalized the riders' exploits, transforming gritty realities into romantic epics. Dime novels, cheap pulp fiction popular in the late 19th century, were among the first to immortalize the service. Authors like Edward Zane Carroll Judson, under the pseudonym Ned Buntline, penned tales such as The Pony Express Rider or Buffalo Bill's First Trail, blending fact with fantasy. These stories depicted riders as dashing knights of the plains, outwitting bandits and braving tempests, their mochilas bulging with destiny-shaping missives. While exaggerating dangers for thrill, they captured the essence of sacrifice, young men risking all for a greater good, embodying the rugged individualism that defined the frontier ethos. One rider who bridged reality and myth was William Buffalo Bill Cody. Though his Pony Express tenure is debated, some historians question if he rode at all. Citing his age and timeline, Cody claimed to have covered 322 miles in 21 hours and 40 minutes as a teen. True or embellished, he leveraged the association in his 1879 autobiography and, more impactfully, in his Wild West shows. Touring America and Europe from 1883 to 1913, Cody's spectacles featured reenactments of Pony Express rides with actors galloping across arenas to thunderous applause. These performances introduced millions to the legend, portraying the Express as a triumph of human will over wilderness, complete with mock native attacks and heroic handoffs. Cody's showmanship ensured the Pony Express became synonymous with the Wild West, influencing global perceptions of American history.
Literature deepened this cultural imprint. Mark Twain, in his 1872 travelogue, Roughing It, devoted chapters to the Express, describing riders as fleet messengers who flew like the wind across desolate expanses. His vivid prose, recounting a personal encounter where a rider overtook his stagecoach, humanized the operation, blending humor with awe at its efficiency. Later works like Zane Grey's 1912 novel Riders of the Purple Sage drew on Express motifs, using horseback relays as metaphors for urgency and peril in Western romances. Even children's books, such as the 1950s Pony Express series, educated young readers on the logistics, framing riders as role models of courage and duty. The silver screen amplified the mythos in the 20th century. Hollywood westerns often featured Pony Express cameos, romanticizing the service in films like The Pony Express 1925, a silent epic starring Betty Compson and Ricardo Cortez, which dramatized the inaugural run with lavish sets and chase scenes. John Ford's 1939 Stagecoach nodded to the Express's legacy, while the 1953 Pony Express with Charlton Heston portrayed Buffalo Bill as a rider foiling outlaws. These movies emphasized survival tactics, quick horse swaps, evasion maneuvers, but glossed over hardships like exhaustion or native conflicts, opting for heroic archetypes. Television followed suit. Episodes of Bonanza and The Virginian in the 1960s wove Express lore into plots, cementing it in pop culture. Beyond entertainment, the Pony Express found permanence in official commemorations. In 1907, the U.S. Postal Service issued a stamp honoring the service, depicting a rider in full gallop, the first of many philatelic tributes. The 1960 centennial sparked nationwide celebrations, parades, historical markers along the route, and the creation of the National Pony Express Association, NPEA. Founded in 1960, the NPEA organizes annual re-rides, where volunteers relay a mochila from St. Joseph to Sacramento over 10 days, mirroring the original path. These events, involving hundreds of riders and horses, preserve logistics like station stops and oaths, educating participants on survival tactics while raising funds for historical preservation.
Museums and trails keep the memory alive. The Pony Express National Museum in St. Joseph houses artifacts, mochilas, saddles, Bibles, narrating the story of relay stations and horses. In Wyoming, the Sweetwater Station site offers guided tours, highlighting native territories and the Paiute War's impact. The Pony Express National Historic Trail, designated in 1992, spans 8 states, with interpretive signs detailing rider routines and sacrifices. Hikers and cyclists trace segments, experiencing the terrain's challenges firsthand, from prairie winds to mountain ascents. The legacy extends to modern symbolism. In business, Pony Express evokes rapid delivery. Companies like Pony Express Couriers adopt the name for same-day services. In politics, it's invoked for urgent reforms, as in Pony Express diplomacy during crises. Educationally, school programs use the Express to teach 19th century history, emphasizing themes of innovation and diversity. Writers hailed from varied backgrounds, including immigrants and possibly free black men, though records are sparse.
Yet, this cultural reverence invites reflection on myths versus reality. Popular depictions often overlook the enterprise's financial failure or the displacement of native peoples, presenting a sanitized West. Recent scholarship, like Christopher Corbett's Orphans Preferred, 2003, demystifies the legend, focusing on verifiable logistics and sacrifices without romance. Documentaries, such as PBS's The Pony Express, 2007, balance heroism with hardships, using rider diaries to reveal exhaustion's toll and territorial tensions. In popular culture, the Pony Express endures because it encapsulates universal themes: the pursuit of connection against odds, the thrill of speed, and the nobility of sacrifice. Its riders, though anonymous in life, became archetypes, wiry youths defying wilderness for a letter's sake. As we near the end of our journey, these cultural echoes set the stage for the final legacy: how the Pony Express's lessons of resilience and innovation resonate in today's world of instant communication.
As the dust settles on the trails of the Pony Express, what remains is not just a footnote in history, but a profound legacy that continues to resonate in our fast-paced world. This audacious venture, born of necessity and fueled by human endurance, encapsulated the essence of speed and sacrifice in ways that shaped America's communication evolution. In this final segment, we reflect on the enduring impact of the Pony Express, its logistical innovations that influenced modern delivery systems, the survival tactics that echo in extreme endeavors today, the vital roles of horses and relay stations in pioneering efficiency, the lessons from native territories, and above all, the timeless testament to sacrifice that inspires generations. Though short-lived, the Express's mantra, "The mail must go through," endures as a beacon of resilience, reminding us how a band of riders braved the wilderness to connect a nation. The legacy begins with logistics, where the Pony Express set a benchmark for organized transport that reverberates in contemporary supply chains. Its relay system, meticulously spaced stations enabling seamless handoffs, was a precursor to modern logistics networks like those of UPS or Amazon. By dividing the 2,000-mile route into digestible segments, the Express achieved an average speed of 10 miles per hour, a feat that demonstrated the power of modular operations. Today, drone deliveries and automated warehouses echo this efficiency, with algorithms optimizing routes, much like superintendents mapped stations. The Mohila's design, prioritizing lightness and security, influenced parcel packaging standards, emphasizing minimalism to reduce transit times. Financially, though a loss maker, it proved that premium speed services could command high fees, a model seen in express shipping options worldwide.
Horses, the heartbeat of the operation, left an indelible mark on equine management and endurance sports. Selected for their blend of speed and stamina, these animals covered grueling distances, teaching lessons in animal welfare that inform modern veterinary practices. Tactics like frequent rotations to prevent overexertion parallel today's horse racing regulations and ultramarathon training for animals. The Pony Express highlighted the human-animal bond, riders' intuitive care, monitoring breaths, adjusting paces,
fostered respect that extends to contemporary equestrian events. Organizations like the American Endurance Ride Conference draw directly from express lore, with riders tackling 100-mile courses that mimic the historical relays, celebrating the horse's legacy of pushing boundaries. Relay stations, those isolated bastions of support, symbolized infrastructure's role in conquering isolation. Their strategic placement every 10 to 15 miles anticipated highway rest stops and cellular towers, ensuring continuity across vast expanses. In remote areas, these outposts provided not just swaps, but community hubs, a concept mirrored in today's rural internet relays or emergency way stations. The logistical challenge of supplying them, wagons hauling grain through blizzards, underscored supply chain resilience. Lessons applied in disaster relief operations, where pop-up depots mirror the express's adaptability. Preservation efforts, like the restored Rock Creek Station in Nebraska, serve as educational sites, teaching how rudimentary logistics bridged continents. Survival tactics against the elements forged a blueprint for extreme adventurism. Riders' strategies, pacing in heat, sheltering in storms, evading bandits with decoys, are echoed in survival training programs for hikers, soldiers, and explorers. Modern gear, like lightweight ponchos or GPS trackers, evolve from their minimalistic kits, emphasizing preparation over bulk. Exhaustion management, through mental focus and brief respites, informs ultra-endurance athletes. Events like the Iditarod sled race adopt similar relay pacing. The rider's oath of discipline inspires team-building exercises in corporate retreats, where no-quit attitudes draw from their unyielding resolve.
Navigating Native American territories imparted sobering lessons on cultural sensitivity and conflict. The Paiute War exposed the costs of unchecked expansion, prompting reflections on indigenous rights that influence contemporary land management. The Express's diplomatic tactics, gifts, detours, truces, model cross-cultural negotiations in global business and peacekeeping. Today, tribal consultations for infrastructure projects, like pipelines or highways, heed these historical missteps, promoting collaboration over conquest. Museums along the route, such as the Paiute Shoshone Cultural Center, highlight mutual stories, fostering understanding of how the Express intersected with Native resilience, turning tragedy into teachable moments. At its core, the legacy is one of sacrifice, the profound human cost that propelled progress. Riders forfeited youth, health, and sometimes lives for a paycheck and purpose, embodying the American dream's gritty underside. Their stories inspire memorials, the Pony Express Monument in St. Joseph, or the annual re-rides that retrace the path, where participants swear modern oaths to honor the original. In education, curricula use the Express to teach history's human element, with simulations of rides building empathy for past struggles. Philanthropically, foundations like the Pony Express Preservation Society fund scholarships for descendants, perpetuating the spirit of opportunity amid adversity. This legacy extends globally, influencing communication revolutions. The Express's speed obsession foreshadowed the telegraph, telephone, and the internet, each shrinking distances further. In the digital age, email's instantaneous delivery fulfills the dream riders chased, yet their analog grit reminds us of technology's roots in human effort. Space exploration draws parallels. NASA's relay satellites mirror station handoffs, while astronaut survival tactics in isolation echo frontier endurance. Even in crises like pandemics, the must-go-through ethos drives vaccine distributions, adapting historical logistics to modern needs.
Culturally, the Pony Express endures as a metaphor for perseverance. In literature and film, it symbolizes bridging divides, east and west, past and future. As climate change challenges remote communities, its tactics for weathering extremes offer practical wisdom. For veterans or first responders,
The riders' camaraderie provides a model for post-trauma support, emphasizing shared sacrifices, healing power. In closing, the Pony Express was more than mail. It was a crucible where speed met sacrifice, forging a nation's connectivity. From logistics that streamline our world to tactics that arm us against adversity, its echoes gallop on. The riders, horses, stations, all braved the wilderness not for fame, but to deliver hope across horizons. As we end this journey, remember, in every urgent message today, there's a whisper of their thunderous ride.